They say truth is stranger than fiction, but I've discovered that family secrets can be stranger than both. My name is Olivia Harrington, and until 2 months ago, I thought defending my daughter from cruel whispers was the hardest battle I'd ever fight as a mother. I was wrong. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I still remember the exact moment when everything changed. The summer breeze carried the scent of barbecue across my sister-in-law's sprawling backyard in Elmwood Heights. The Harrington family reunion was in full swing, children chasing each other through sprinklers, uncles arguing about politics near the grill, aunts exchanging recipes and neighborhood gossip under the shade of century-old oak trees. It should have been perfect. For most families, it would have been. Not for us. Not for my daughter, Sophia. She certainly doesn't look like a Harrington, does she? The words, barely whispered yet somehow loud enough for everyone to hear, came from my husband's cousin Eleanor. She glanced from Sophia's curly auburn hair to my husband Derek's straight blonde locks, then to my dark brown waves. Her smile was sweet, her eyes anything but. At 16, Sophia had mastered the art of pretending not to hear such comments. She continued arranging deviled eggs on a serving platter, her fingers trembling slightly. But I saw the familiar tightening of her jaw, the slight flush creeping up her neck. This wasn't the first time, of course. The Harrington family had a particular talent for disguising cruelty as concern, judgment as observation. For years, they'd been just noticing how Sophia didn't have the Harrington nose, or the Harrington height, or the Harrington musical ability. As if genetics worked like some kind of perfect photocopier, Derek never noticed, or chose not. To his rose-colored glasses when it came to his family were firmly in place since childhood. Growing up as the youngest son of the prestigious Harrington line in Elmwood Heights had taught him to overlook their flaws, to translate their barbs into misguided affection. "Mom, it's fine," Sophia whispered when I moved to her side. "Really, I'm used to it." That was what broke my heart the most. The fact that my beautiful, brilliant daughter had grown accustomed to being treated as an outsider in her own family. We'd never hidden anything from Sophia. She knew all about my difficulty conceiving, the years of treatments, the heartbreak of multiple miscarriages before her miraculous arrival. Our miracle baby. That's what we'd always called her. This annual family reunion was hosted by Derek's older sister, Valerie, at her restored Victorian mansion. As the self-appointed guardian of Harrington family traditions and propriety, Valerie took pride in her perfectly coordinated events where appearances mattered above all else. Her twin daughters, Madison and Mackenzie, were a year older than Sophia and had perfected their mother's talent for backhanded compliments by the time they were 10. "Aunt Olivia!" Madison called from across the patio, her voice carrying just a bit too loudly. "We're putting together a slideshow for Grandma Harrington's 80th birthday next month. Do you have any baby pictures of Sophia that look more Harrington-ish? For consistency?" Before I could respond, Mackenzie chimed in. "Or maybe we should do a separate section. You know, for non-biological family members?" Derek, finally emerging from his conversation with his brothers, joined us with a plate of food. "What's this about a slideshow?" "Nothing," I said quickly, placing a hand on Sophia's shoulder. I could feel her tension through the thin fabric of her summer dress. "Just some ideas for your mother's birthday." "Well, we want everyone included," he said cheerfully, oblivious to the undercurrents. "Mom would want that. Would she?" Margaret Harrington had never explicitly said anything against Sophia, but she'd never contradicted the whispers either. Her practiced silence was its own form of approval. Later, as the afternoon stretched into evening and fireflies began to dot the garden, I found Sophia sitting alone on the old tire swing that hung from the largest oak tree, away from the party, lights and laughter. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, leaning against the rough bark. "Want to head home? I've got a migraine brewing. It was our code, our escape plan when family gatherings became too much. Not yet. Something in her voice was different, harder, more determined than I'd ever heard before. I need to show you something. From her pocket, she pulled a folded piece of paper. As she smoothed it out in the fading light, I recognized the logo of a popular DNA testing company. Sophia, what is this? My results came back yesterday. Her eyes, so like mine despite what the Harringtons claimed, met mine steadily. I was going to wait to show you, but after today, I think it's time everyone knows the truth. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. The truth about what? About who I really am. About who the Harringtons really are. She handed me the paper. Read it, Mom, especially the part about close genetic matches. As I scanned the document, specific lines jumped out at me. Genetic ancestry, 37% Eastern European, 25% Irish, matches with known relatives. Derek Harrington, paternal relationship, confirmed. Valerie Harrington Davis, close relationship, aunt. See? I am a Harrington, Sophia said, by blood, by DNA, by every scientific measure, just like I've always been. Relief flooded through me. Well, we always knew that, didn't we? This doesn't change anything. Keep reading, Mom. Further down the page, additional close genetic match. Margaret Elizabeth Harrington, maternal grandmother. Relationship. Suggested grandmother. That couldn't be right. Margaret was Derek's mother, not mine. She couldn't be Sophia's maternal grandmother unless… There's more, Sophia said quietly. Look at the next page. I turned the paper over with trembling fingers. Another match. Eleanor Harrington Walsh. Relationship. Suggested half-sister, Eleanor. Derek's cousin. The same Eleanor who had started the whispers today. This has to be a mistake, I whispered. But even as the words left my mouth, memories began to resurface. Derek's strange reluctance to ever discuss his cousin. Eleanor's unexplained absence during her senior year of high school, the year before Derek and I met. The way Margaret always seemed to watch Eleanor and Sophia together with an expression I could never quite interpret. I don't think it is, Mom. Sophia took the paper back, folding it carefully. And tomorrow, at the final day of the reunion, when they unveil that ridiculous Harrington family tree Aunt Valerie has been working on, for months, I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly where I belong on it. The look in her eyes, determination mixed with hurt and years of stored-up anger, told me that our carefully constructed family narrative was about to change forever. And somehow, watching my daughter stand straighter, chin lifted in defiance, against years of subtle rejection, I knew that whatever storm was coming, it was long overdue. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I couldn't sleep that night. Derek snored peacefully beside me in our hotel room, oblivious to the storm brewing in his family, in our family. I kept thinking about the DNA results, trying to make sense of what they meant. If Eleanor was Sophia's half-sister and Margaret was somehow Sophia's maternal grandmother, the implications were too disturbing to contemplate. Around 3 a.m., I slipped out of bed and onto the balcony of our room at the Elmwood Heights Inn. The small boutique hotel sat just 2 blocks from Valerie's house, chosen specifically for family members traveling in for the reunion. I wondered how many secrets these walls had heard over the years, how many families had unraveled in these rooms. I pulled up old photos on my phone, pictures I'd taken during my first visits to the Harrington home when Derek and I were dating. I'd been so eager to make a good impression on his family, especially his mother. Margaret had been intimidating with her tailored suits and perfect posture, the family matriarch who'd raised 3 children alone after her husband's early death, in C. One photo, taken during a Harrington Christmas party 18 years ago, I noticed something I'd overlooked before. In the background, barely visible near the fireplace, stood a teenage Eleanor. She couldn't have been more than 16, and now that I looked closely, there was something about her expression, haunted, withdrawn. 3 months later, she'd been sent to a special boarding school for the remainder of the school year. And 9 months after that Christmas party, I met Derek at a coffee shop near the university where I was studying nursing, and he was finishing his business degree. Our whirlwind romance had been the stuff of fairy tales. At least that's what I'd believed. 6 months later, we were engaged. By the following spring, I was wearing a Harrington family heirloom ring and planning a wedding. I scrolled further, finding a photo from our wedding day. Margaret stood between us, her smile tight, but her hand gripping Derek's arm possessively. Eleanor wasn't in attendance. School commitments, they'd said. Sophia was born exactly 2 years after our wedding. When we'd brought her to the Harrington home for the first time, Margaret had held her with an intensity that had struck me as odd. Not the casual affection of a grandmother, but something more desperate, more examining. She has the Harrington eyes, she'd declared. Though at 3 weeks old, Sophia's eyes were still the unfocused blue of most newborns. A text message alert jolted me from my memories. Sophia, also unable to sleep. "Mom, I need to tell you something. Meet me in the hotel lobby?" I found her curled in one of the oversized leather chairs near the unlit fireplace, still in her pajamas with a hotel robe wrapped around her. The lobby was deserted at this hour, the night manager discreetly occupied behind the reception desk. "I didn't just do the DNA test for fun," she said as I sat beside her. "I had questions. For years." "What kind of questions?" My throat felt dry, about why I never fit in. Why Dad's family always looked at me like I was wrong somehow. She twisted a lock of her auburn hair around her finger, a nervous habit since childhood. "At first, I thought maybe I really was adopted, and you and Dad just never told me. But that didn't make sense with all your stories about my birth." "Sophia, we would never lie to you about something like that. I know. So when Mackenzie made that comment at Christmas about how I must have gotten my artistic ability from your side because no Harrington could possibly be that creative, I bought the test. I was going to prove once and for all that I was a Harrington." Her laugh was hollow. "I guess I proved more than I bargained for." "Have you shown these results to anyone else?" I asked, my mind racing ahead to damage control. "Just Cameron." Her boyfriend of 8 months, a sweet, serious boy who wanted to be a doctor. "He's the one who helped me understand some of the genetic markers. His mom works in a lab." I took a deep breath. "Sophia, these results, they suggest some very complicated things about our family, things that might be painful for everyone involved." "You mean like the fact that Dad's cousin Eleanor might actually be my biological mother?" Her voice was steady, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. "And that you've been raising me thinking I was yours? I don't know what these results mean." "Exactly," I said carefully. "DNA testing isn't always perfect, Mom." She cut me off. "Stop. I'm not a child anymore. I deserve the truth. Whatever it is, the truth." Such a simple word for such a complicated concept. "I need to speak with your father," I said finally, "and possibly with Eleanor and your grandmother. There are questions that need answers before we jump to conclusions." "I already tried talking to Eleanor." Sophia's words sent a chill through me. "Yesterday, when everyone was setting up for the barbecue, I showed her the results and asked if there was something she wanted to tell me." "What did she say?" "Nothing. She turned white as a ghost, then told me to keep my mouth shut if I knew what was good for the family, that some secrets should stay buried." Sophia's chin lifted in that defiant gesture I recognized from earlier. Then she said grandmother would never forgive her if this got out. When I asked what this was, she walked away. The lobby suddenly felt too small, too exposed. Anyone could come down at any moment. One of Derek's brothers, Valerie, even Margaret. Herself, who was staying in the hotel's best suite. "We need to be careful how we approach this," I said. "Family secrets like this, if that's what we're dealing with, they don't just affect you or me. They can tear apart everything. Everyone. Isn't that already happening?" Sophia asked. "Haven't I already been torn apart, piece by piece, every time they've made me feel like I don't belong? Like I'm some kind of mistake?" The raw pain in her voice broke my heart. For 16 years, I'd tried to shield her from exactly this kind of hurt, to build her confidence against the subtle undermining from the Harrington clan. Had I failed her so completely? "You are not a mistake," I said fiercely. "No matter what these DNA results show, no matter what happened before you were born, you are the best thing that ever happened to me and your father. And we are your parents, in every way that truly matters." "But what if Dad doesn't know?" she whispered. "What if he thinks I'm really his daughter with you, when actually I'm his daughter with someone else?" The question hung between us, impossible to dismiss yet, too painful to answer. "I don't know," I admitted. "But we'll figure it out together, I promise." We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of unasked questions pressing down on us. Finally, Sophia straightened her shoulders. "I still want to confront them," she said. "All of them. Tomorrow, during the family tree ceremony. They've spent 16 years making me feel like an outsider. I want them to know that I'm as much a Harrington as any of them. Maybe more, considering how many branches of the family tree I apparently occupy." There was a bitterness in her voice I'd never heard before, an edge that worried me. "Let me talk." "To your father first," I pleaded. "Give me until morning. This will blindside him completely." Sophia considered this, then nodded reluctantly. "Fine. Talk to Dad at breakfast. But by noon, when Aunt Valerie unveils that ridiculous family tree she's been working on, everyone's going to know the truth, whatever it is." As we headed back upstairs, I realized something with absolute clarity. Our family would never be the same after tomorrow. Whatever secrets had been buried in the Harrington family history were about to be exhumed, and the fallout would change all of us forever. The question was no longer if our family would fracture, but how many pieces it would break into, and whether any of those pieces could ever fit together again. Morning arrived too quickly. I'd managed perhaps 2 hours of fitful sleep before the alarm blared at 7 a.m. Derek was already in the shower, humming tunelessly, a man with no idea his world was about to implode. How do you tell your husband of 17 years that the daughter he adores might not be the child he thinks she is? That his cousin might be her biological mother? That somewhere in the twisted branches of his family tree lurked a secret so devastating it could destroy everything we'd built together? I dressed mechanically, my mind racing through possible approaches, rehearsing and discarding opening lines. "Derek, we need to talk about Sophia's DNA test," seemed too blunt. "I think your family has been keeping secrets too accusatory." "You're quiet this morning," Derek observed as we headed down to the hotel restaurant for breakfast. "Everything okay?" "Just tired," I lied. "Didn't sleep well." "Me either. These hotel beds are always too soft." He squeezed my hand. "But hey, one more day of family fun and then we can head home. Sophia seemed to be having a good time yesterday, don't you think?" The question was so disconnected from reality that I nearly laughed. Instead, I managed a non-committal noise as we entered the restaurant. Sophia had texted that she was meeting Cameron for breakfast in town, giving me space to talk with Derek. A small mercy. I needed to handle this conversation in private. We were seated in a corner booth, menus placed before us by a server who promised to return shortly for our orders. The perfect moment, as private as we were going to get. "Derek," I began, my voice lower than normal. "There's something important we need to discuss about Sophia." His face immediately clouded with concern. "Is she okay? Did something happen yesterday?" "She's fine, physically. But I took a deep breath. She did a DNA test, one of those ancestry kits. The results came back with some unexpected information. Derek's eyebrows rose slightly. What? Is she not as Irish as we thought? I always told you my family had more German than the family stories claimed. It's not about distant ancestry, I said, reaching across the table to take his hand. It's about immediate family matches. The test showed expected connections, to you, to Valerie, as your sister, but it also showed unexpected relationships. A small crease appeared between his brows. Like what? Like a half-sibling relationship with Eleanor, and a maternal grandmother relationship with your mother. The words hung in the air between us. Derek's face remained blank for several seconds, then confusion washed over it, followed by disbelief. That's ridiculous, he said finally. Those tests are notoriously unreliable for close family connections. She must have misinterpreted the results. Sophia showed them to me. I saw the reports, I said gently. And when she confronted Eleanor about it, Eleanor essentially told her to keep quiet about it, for the sake of the family. The color drained from Derek's face. That's impossible. That would mean... He couldn't finish the sentence, so I did it for him. It suggests that Eleanor is Sophia's biological mother, and that you are still her biological father. No. The word came out harsh, definitive. Absolutely. Not. I would never have... He stopped, his eyes suddenly distant, as if searching through memories. I'm not accusing you of anything, I said quickly. I don't know what happened, but these results suggest something did, and Sophia deserves answers. We all do. Derek stared at his untouched coffee. Eleanor lived with us for a while, he said. Finally, his voice hollow. During my senior year of college, she was having problems at home, and my mother suggested she stay with me, get a fresh start in a new city. She was 17. My breath caught. I'd heard vague mentions of this arrangement before, but Derek rarely spoke about that time. We'd met just months after Eleanor had returned to Elmwood Heights. Nothing happened between us, he insisted, looking up at me with anguished eyes. Nothing like what you're suggesting. We barely spoke most of the time. She was in a bad place, rebellious, angry. Mom thought I could be a good influence, keep her on track for college. Then how do you explain the DNA results? I can't, he admitted. But there has to be another explanation. These tests make mistakes. Or maybe... He trailed off, a new thought visibly taking hold. Maybe someone tampered with the test. Valerie or the twins. They've always been jealous of how close Sophia and I are. They could have done this to cause trouble. The desperation in his voice broke my heart. He was grasping at straws rather than facing what was becoming increasingly clear. Derek, I said softly, I think we need to talk to your mother. And Eleanor, before Sophia takes matters into her own hands. What do you mean? She's planning to confront everyone at the family tree unveiling ceremony today. She's tired of being made to feel like she doesn't belong, and now she has what she thinks is proof that she's more of a Harrington than anyone realized. Derek pushed his coffee, cup away abruptly. This is insane. My mother would never... He stopped again, his certainty wavering. We need to find Eleanor, now. We left the restaurant, our breakfast forgotten. Derek pulled out his phone and began texting rapidly as we crossed the hotel lobby. She's staying at my mother's house, he explained. I told her we need to speak with her urgently, in private. We waited in tense silence for Eleanor's response. When it came, Derek's frown deepened. She says she's busy helping with the reunion preparations and will have to wait until this afternoon. His jaw tightened. That's not happening. We took Derek's car, driving the short distance to Margaret Harrington's meticulously maintained colonial home. The morning air was already heavy with humidity, promising another scorching summer day. Perfect weather for family secrets to boil over. Eleanor's car wasn't in the driveway, but Margaret's silver Mercedes was. Derek hesitated only briefly before marching up to the front door and ringing the bell. His mother answered wearing gardening gloves, her silver hair pulled back in an elegant knot despite the early hour. "Derek? Olivia? What brings you here so early? The ceremony isn't until noon." "We need to talk, Mom," Derek said, his voice tightly controlled. "About Sophia and Eleanor." Something flickered across Margaret's face, too quick to identify, but unmistakably there. She removed her gloves deliberately, taking her time. "Come into the garden," she said finally. "It's more private." We followed her through the house to the back garden, a showpiece of perfectly trimmed hedges and color-coordinated flower beds. Margaret's pride and joy, tended by her own hands despite her age, no gardeners allowed to touch her precious blooms. "Now," she said, settling onto a wrought iron bench beneath a pergola dripping with wisteria. "What's this about Sophia and Eleanor?" Derek remained standing, his body rigid with tension. "Sophia did a DNA test. It shows she's biologically related to Eleanor as a half-sister. And to you as a maternal grandmother." Margaret didn't flinch, didn't gasp in shock or protest the impossibility. She simply folded her gloved hands in her lap and looked out at her garden. "I always knew this day might come," she said quietly, "though I'd hoped it would be after I was gone." The simple admission sent my world tilting on its axis. I'd expected denials, outrage, not this calm acceptance. "What are you saying?" Derek's voice cracked. "Sit down, both of you," Margaret said. "This isn't a story I want to tell standing up." We sank onto the bench opposite her, Derek's hand finding mine in a desperate grip. "Eleanor came to live with you for a reason?" Margaret began. "Not just because she was troubled, as we told everyone. She was pregnant, Derek. 4 months along when I sent her to you." "That's impossible," Derek whispered. "I would have noticed." She hid it well. Baggy clothes, limited contact. "And you were busy with your final semester, that internship at the investment firm. She said you never questioned her staying in her room for hours, her strange eating, habits, her refusal to socialize." "Who was the father?" Derek asked. Margaret's lips thinned. She wouldn't say. Some boy from school, I assumed. It doesn't matter now. "But the DNA test," I started. "I'm getting to that," Margaret cut me off. "Eleanor had the baby secretly. A private adoption was arranged through a connection at my church. Everything was done properly, legally. The baby went to a good home." "Then how is Sophia?" Derek began. "I'm not finished," Margaret said sharply. 6 months later, Derek brought you home, Olivia. Young, beautiful, so eager to be part of our family. And then came your engagement, so quickly. I was happy for you, truly. But then you shared your heartbreak, month after month, trying to conceive without success. I felt a cold dread spreading, through me. What did you do, Margaret? Her eyes, so like Derek's, met mine squarely. What any mother would do to ease her child's pain. When you started exploring adoption, I made a few calls, pulled a few strings. No, I whispered, understanding, dawning with horrific clarity. The adoptive family was having difficulties, financial problems, marital issues. When they heard another family was interested, a family with connections to the birth mother, they were open to reconsidering the arrangement. Sophia, Derek said numbly. Eleanor's baby was Sophia. Margaret nodded. It seemed perfect. Eleanor's child would stay in the family, but without the scandal, without ruining her future. You and Olivia would have the baby you desperately wanted. The adoption was handled through a different agency, new paperwork, all perfectly legal. But why the secrecy? I demanded. anger beginning to burn through my shock. Why let us believe Sophia was from unknown birth parents? Why put her through years of feeling like an outsider in this family? Because of the DNA, Margaret said simply. If you knew Eleanor was her birth mother, you might have wondered about the father, and that was a door that could never be opened. A terrible suspicion began forming in my mind. Who is Sophia's biological father, Margaret? The garden fell silent except for the distant hum of bees among the lavender. Margaret's eyes drifted to Derek, then away, unable to hold his gaze. Sometimes at family gatherings, she said softly, secrets are kept not to hurt people, but to protect them from truths they aren't ready to face. The garden seemed to shrink around us, the carefully tended flowers suddenly too bright, too perfect against the horror of what Margaret was implying. Derek's hand had gone slack in mine, his face a mask of disbelief. What exactly are you saying? Mother? His voice was dangerously quiet. Margaret smoothed non-existent wrinkles from her linen pants. I think you already know, Derek. Eleanor was young, vulnerable. You were older, established, in a position of power. That's a lie. Derek stood abruptly, towering over his mother. I never touched Eleanor. Never. How dare you suggest? Not knowingly, perhaps, Margaret said, her composure never wavering. That New Year's Eve party at your apartment. You remember it, surely. You called me the next day, worried about how much you'd had to drink, how there were gaps in your memory. I remembered that call. It had happened about a month before I met Derek. He'd mentioned it once, embarrassed by his uncharacteristic overindulgence, how he'd woken up in his clothes from the night before with no memory of going to bed. Eleanor was there, Margaret continued. She confided in me months later when she couldn't hide the pregnancy anymore. Said you'd both had too much to drink. Said she'd gone to check on you in your room and things. Happened. That's not possible, Derek insisted, but I could hear the first tremor of doubt in his voice. I would remember. Would you? How much of that night do you actually recall? Derek turned to me, his eyes pleading. Olivia, you have to believe me. I would never— I know, I said, squeezing his hand. And I did know. Whatever had happened that night, the Derek I'd known for 17 years would never deliberately take advantage of a teenager in his care. But my certainty did nothing to erase the DNA results or the terrible possibility that hung in the air. When Eleanor told me she was pregnant, Margaret continued, she was terrified, not just of her parents' reaction, but of what it would do to you, Derek. Your career was just taking off. A scandal involving your teenage cousin would have destroyed everything. So you covered it up, I said flatly. Sent her to live with Derek, the very person she was supposedly afraid of, and arranged a secret adoption. I protected my family, Margaret corrected. Eleanor agreed to everything. She didn't want to keep the baby, didn't want to derail her life. The adoption was the perfect solution. Until it wasn't, Derek said bitterly. Until you manipulated the situation to bring Eleanor's baby back into the family. Did you ever stop to think what would happen when the truth eventually came out? Did you consider what this would do to Sophia? Margaret's chin lifted. I considered that she would be raised by loving parents in a family with means and connections, rather than by strangers who might not provide the advantages a Harrington deserves. The advantages of feeling like an outsider? Of being subtly rejected by her own blood relatives? Those advantages? My voice shook with rage. A shadow of something, regret perhaps, crossed Margaret's face. That was never my intention. I thought with time, everyone would simply accept Sophia as yours. Everyone except Eleanor, I said. She's been watching her daughter grow up, forced to pretend she's just a distant relative. No wonder she's been so cold, so determined to emphasize that Sophia isn't a real Harrington. It was the only way she could cope with seeing her every holiday, every reunion. Eleanor made her choice, Margaret said firmly. She wanted to move on with her life. Did she? Derek challenged. Or did you make that choice for her, like you've made so many choices for this family? Before Margaret could answer, my phone buzzed with a text. Sophia, where are you? Ceremony starting in an hour. If you're not back by then, I'm doing this. My way. I showed the message to Derek, whose face hardened with resolve. We need to find Eleanor. Now. Before Sophia does something that can't be undone. Margaret rose. Eleanor left for Valerie's about 30 minutes ago. She's helping with the final setup for the ceremony. Then that's where we're going, Derek said. And Mother, you're coming with us. It's time everyone heard the truth, the whole truth, from the people responsible. The drive to Valerie's was tense. Margaret seated rigidly in the back of Derek's car, her eyes fixed on the passing scenery. I tried calling Sophia repeatedly, but she wasn't answering. She's going to expose everything, I said anxiously. In front of the entire family. Maybe that's for the best, Derek said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. No more secrets. No more lies. As we pulled into Valerie's already crowded driveway, I spotted Sophia standing under a tree at the edge of the property, Cameron beside her, their heads bent together in conversation. Relief flooded through me. There she is, I said, pointing. I'll try to intercept her while you find Eleanor. Derek nodded grimly. Meet us in Valerie's study. We'll get Eleanor and my sister. This needs to be handled privately first. I hurried across the lawn toward Sophia while Derek escorted his mother toward the house. Before I could reach my daughter, however, Mackenzie appeared at her side, smartphone in hand. There you are. Everyone's looking for you, she was saying to Sophia. Mom wants all the younger generation up front for the ceremony, for photos. I quickened my pace, but I was too late. Mackenzie had linked her arm through Sophia's, leading her toward the back garden where chairs had been arranged in front of a draped easel, presumably hiding Valerie's grand family tree project. Sophia, I called. She turned, spotted me, and hesitated. Something in my expression must have betrayed my urgency, because she disengaged from Mackenzie and waited for me to catch up. What's going on? She asked. Did you talk to Dad? Yes, I said, keeping my voice low. We need to speak with you, privately, before the ceremony. Is it about the DNA test? Her expression grew guarded. Did he confirm what I already know? It's complicated, I said, glancing at the gathering crowd. Family members were taking their seats, Valerie directing traffic like a drill sergeant in designer clothing. Please, just come with me to the house. Your dad is finding Eleanor and... Eleanor? Sophia's voice rose. So it is true. She is my biological mother. Sophia, please, I begged. Not here. Not like this. But it was too late. Mackenzie, who had lingered nearby, gasped audibly. What did you just say? Heads turned in our direction. Valerie paused mid-instruction, her perfect eyebrows drawing together in confusion. And behind her, emerging from the house with a tray of champagne glasses, was Eleanor. Our eyes met across the lawn. The tray slipped from her hands, glass shattering on the patio stones. The sound seemed to freeze everyone in place. In that moment of suspended animation, I saw Eleanor not as the cold, distant woman who had made my daughter feel unwelcome, but as a frightened girl who had made an impossible choice, or had it made for her. The weight of 16 years of secrets seemed to press her into the ground. I need to speak with my family, Sophia announced, her voice carrying across the sudden silence. All of my family, including my biological mother. Eleanor took an instinctive step backward, her face draining of color. What nonsense is this? Valerie demanded, striding toward us. Sophia, if this is some attention-seeking stunt. It's not a stunt, Sophia said, pulling the folded DNA results from her pocket. It's science. And it says that Eleanor is my half-sister, which makes a lot more sense if she's actually my mother. A murmur rippled through the gathered family members. I caught sight of Derek emerging from the house, his expression grim as he took in the scene unfolding on the lawn. "Someone get Eleanor a chair," Margaret ordered, appearing behind Derek. "And the rest of you, give us some privacy. This is a family matter." "We're all family here," Valerie said, confusion evident in her voice. "What exactly is going on?" "I'll tell you what's going on," Sophia said, stepping forward. "For 16 years, I've been treated like I don't quite belong. Like being adopted somehow made me less of a Harrington. But according to this DNA test, I'm more Harrington than anyone realized." She turned to Eleanor, who had sunk into a chair someone had brought forward. "Aren't I?" Eleanor's eyes darted to Margaret, then to Derek, a cornered animal seeking escape. "This isn't how this should happen," Derek said, moving to stand beside me and Sophia. "Valerie, is there somewhere we can speak privately?" "Just family." "The immediate." "Family is already here," Valerie said, gesturing to the gathered relatives. "And apparently we're about to learn that it's more immediate than we thought." Her gaze shifted between Derek and Eleanor, a dawning comprehension in her eyes. "Derek, you didn't—" "It's not what you think," Derek began, but Eleanor finally spoke, her voice surprisingly steady. "Yes, it is," she said, rising from the chair. "It's exactly what you think, Valerie. Sophia is my daughter, and Derek is her father. Though he didn't know until today, so direct your judgment where it belongs." Her eyes fixed on Margaret. "With the person who orchestrated this entire situation." The garden erupted in shocked exclamations. I felt Sophia sway beside me and put my arm around her shoulders to steady her. This wasn't how any of this was supposed to happen. Not in front of dozens of relatives. Not as a spectacle for the entire Harrington clan to dissect and discuss for generations to come. But as I looked at my daughter's face, at the strange mixture of vindication and devastation warring in her eyes, I realized that perhaps this was exactly how it needed to happen. In the open, where the truth couldn't be hidden away again, couldn't be reshaped into something more palatable for the Harrington family image. "Is it true?" Sophia asked, her voice smaller now, addressing Eleanor directly. "You're really my biological—" "Mother?" Eleanor nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, and I'm so sorry, Sophia. Not for giving you to Derek and Olivia. They've been the parents you deserved, but for how I've treated you. It was the only way I could bear seeing you. Grow up calling someone else mom." "That's enough," Margaret cut in sharply. "Eleanor, you agreed never to speak of this." "I was 17, Eleanor shot back, scared and alone. "I would have agreed to anything you said." "You were hardly alone," Margaret sniffed. "I arranged everything, made sure you had the best care. After sending me to live with the person you now claim took advantage of me?" Eleanor laughed bitterly. "Your concern was always for appearances, Aunt Margaret. Never for me or this baby." I felt Derek tense beside me. "I need everyone to understand something," he said, his voice carrying across the garden. "I have no memory of any encounter with Eleanor. If what my mother claims is true, it happened without my knowledge or consent." "Convenient," someone muttered from the crowd. Derek ignored them, focusing on Sophia. "But what I do know, what I have always known, is that you are my daughter. DNA test or no DNA test, memories or no memories, you have been my child from the moment we brought you home. And mine," I added fiercely. "Biology doesn't make a mother, Sophia. 16 years of loving you, raising you, fighting for you. That's what makes a mother." Eleanor flinched visibly at my words. "She's right," she said after a moment. "I gave birth to you, Sophia, but Olivia is your mother in every way that matters." Sophia looked between us, tears streaming down her face. Then her gaze settled on Margaret, who stood ramrod straight despite the chaos swirling around her. "Did you ever plan to tell me the truth?" Sophia asked her. "Or was I supposed to go my whole life feeling like I didn't quite fit, never understanding? Why?" Before Margaret could answer, Valerie stepped forward, the family tree diagram clutched in her hands. She'd removed the covering, and I could see the meticulously drawn branches spreading across the large poster board. At the bottom, in the newest generation, was a dotted line connecting Sophia to Derek and me, the universal symbol for adoption, I. "Think," Valerie said slowly, "that we need to make some corrections to this family tree." The family reunion disintegrated into chaos after Eleanor's confession. Relatives huddled in shocked clusters across Valerie's lawn, whispering behind cupped hands while stealing glances at our fractured family drama. Valerie, ever the efficient hostess even in crisis, directed everyone to the buffet tables on the far side of the garden, creating at least the illusion of privacy around the epicenter of the scandal. "We should go inside," Derek said, his voice strained but determined. All of us. No one argued. Valerie led our somber procession into her home and to the formal living room, a space usually off-limits during family gatherings, preserved in catalog-perfect condition for rare occasions deemed worthy of its pristine cream sofas and crystal decor. Apparently, uncovering a 16-year family conspiracy qualified. We settled awkwardly around the room. Derek and I on one sofa, Sophia perched rigidly on an armchair, Eleanor standing by the window as if calculating her escape route, and Margaret seated, regally in a high-backed chair, her spine never touching the upholstery. Valerie hovered near the doorway, uncertain of her place in this unfolding drama. "I think," Derek said after a heavy silence, "that we all deserve to hear exactly what happened. The complete truth, from the beginning." All eyes turned to Margaret, who clasped her hands in her lap and lifted her chin. "The complete truth," she repeated. An interesting concept. As if any of us ever operates with complete information. We all make decisions based on what we know at the time, what we believe is best. "Mother," Derek warned, "no more manipulation, no more evasion." Margaret sighed, a small concession. "Very well. Eleanor came to me in the spring of 1998. She was 4 months pregnant and desperate. Her parents, my late husband's brother and his wife, were strict, traditional people. They would have been unforgiving. They would have disowned me," Eleanor clarified, her voice flat. "Cut me off without a penny, pulled me out of school, paraded my shame before the whole community. That was the Harrington way of handling indiscretions." Margaret inclined her head slightly, acknowledging the truth of this. I offered a solution. Eleanor would go to stay with Derek, ostensibly to prepare for college in the city. The pregnancy would remain secret. After the birth, the baby would be placed for adoption through private channels, and Eleanor could resume her life unburdened. "Unburdened," Eleanor repeated bitterly. "As if you can give away a piece of yourself and not feel the wound for the rest of your life." "You agreed," Margaret reminded her sharply. "I was a terrified teenager. What choice did I have?" Eleanor turned to Sophia, her expression softening. "But I want you to know, I never regretted giving you life. Just the circumstances." Sophia's hands twisted in her lap. "And my father? You said it was Derek, but he doesn't remember anything." An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Finally, Margaret spoke. "There was a party, as I mentioned before. New Year's Eve 1997 at Derek's apartment. Eleanor was staying with him by then. Derek had been drinking heavily, uncharacteristically so. I was celebrating," Derek said quietly. "Had just secured my first major client at the firm." "Yes, well, according to Eleanor, you passed out in your room. She went to check on you and—" Margaret paused delicately. "And what?" I prompted, my patience wearing thin. "Derek was unconscious. Are you suggesting Eleanor took advantage of the situation?" Eleanor's head snapped up. "That's not what happened." Her eyes darted to Derek, then away. "I never said that to you, Aunt Margaret." "Never? Then what did happen?" Derek asked, his voice tight with strain. Because I have no memory of any encounter with you, Eleanor. None. Eleanor wrapped her arms around herself, as if suddenly cold despite the summer heat. I went to check on you, she said softly. You were not completely unconscious. You thought I was someone else. You called me by another name. Derek frowned. What name? Rebecca, Eleanor said. Your girlfriend from college, the one who broke your heart the year before. I'd heard about Rebecca from Derek early in our relationship, his first serious girlfriend, who'd left him for his roommate during senior year of college. He rarely spoke of her. You thought I was her, Eleanor continued. You pulled me down beside you, started talking about how much you missed her, how you wanted her back. She swallowed hard. You kissed me. Things escalated. I should have stopped it. I know that now. But I was young and stupid and had had a crush on you forever and— Stop, Derek interrupted, his face ashen. Are you saying I was conscious enough to be physically capable, but too intoxicated, to recognize who you were? Eleanor nodded miserably. By the time I realized how wrong it was too late. You passed out completely right after. The next morning you didn't remember anything, and I was too ashamed to say anything. I convinced myself it didn't happen, until I couldn't deny it anymore. The room fell silent again, each of us processing this new version of events. It was neither the predatory scenario Margaret had implied, nor the complete innocence Derek had claimed. It resided in that gray area of bad decisions and worse consequences that seemed to define so many family secrets. So you told Margaret, I said, trying to piece together the timeline. And she orchestrated everything that followed. Yes, Eleanor confirmed. She told me Derek could never know. It would destroy him, his relationship with Rebecca. Rebecca. And I were already over, Derek interjected. I didn't know that, Eleanor said. Aunt Margaret said you were trying to win her back, that this would ruin any chance of reconciliation, and my life would be over too if anyone found out. All eyes turned to Margaret, whose expression remained impassive. I did what I thought was best, she said simply. The adoption was arranged. Eleanor finished high school, went on to college. Life continued. Until I met Derek, I said, putting together the next piece. And we got engaged. Yes, Margaret acknowledged. You were a lovely couple, perfect for each other. And then there was your difficulty conceiving. I remembered those painful years of trying, of monthly disappointments, of tests and treatments and tears. So when we started looking into adoption, I saw an opportunity, Margaret finished. A chance to bring my granddaughter back into the family, to give her the Harrington name and advantages, while solving your heartbreak. Without telling us who she really was, Derek said, anger edging his voice, without giving Eleanor any say in the matter. Eleanor had made her choice, Margaret said dismissively. No, you made it for me, Eleanor countered. When Sophia was 6 months old, you called me at college and simply informed me that you'd found a wonderful solution, that my baby, the baby I'd been trying to forget, to move past, was now being raised by my cousin and his new wife. That I would see her at every family gathering for the rest of my life. I tried to imagine the cruelty of that, of being forced to watch your child grow up calling other people mom and dad, of having to pretend she was nothing to you. No wonder Eleanor had kept her distance, had emphasized Sophia's outsider status. It was the only way to maintain the emotional wall between them. Did you even consider what that would do to Eleanor? I asked Margaret. Or to Sophia, if the truth ever came out? I considered what was best for the family as a whole, Margaret replied. One person's discomfort seemed a small price to pay for keeping the Harrington name untarnished, for giving my granddaughter her birthright, for providing you and Derek with the child you desperately wanted. My discomfort, Eleanor said, her voice rising. My pain. My child. You speak about the Harrington name as if it's some precious legacy, but all I see is a family willing to sacrifice its youngest members to maintain appearances. Sophia, who had been unnaturally quiet throughout these revelations, finally spoke. So, all those times you made me feel like I didn't belong. At Christmas, at family photos, at every reunion, that was your way of coping? Eleanor met her gaze, directly for perhaps the first time. Yes, and it was wrong. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, Sophia. I don't deserve it. But I want you to understand. Seeing you grow up, becoming this amazing person, knowing I had no right to claim any part of you, it broke something in me. You could have told me the truth, Derek said. At any point in the last 16 years, Eleanor, you could have taken me aside and explained what happened. And risk losing my place in the family entirely? Eleanor asked. Your mother made it very clear what would happen if I ever spoke up. I'd already lost my daughter. I couldn't bear to lose everyone else, too. So instead you punished Sophia, I said, unable to keep the anger from my voice. Made her feel unwelcome in the only family she's ever known. I never meant to hurt her, Eleanor whispered. I just couldn't pretend everything was normal. Couldn't play the role of doting cousin when I'd carried her inside me for 9 months. Sophia stood suddenly, drawing everyone's attention. Stop talking about me like I'm not here, all of you. Her voice was steadier than I expected, her eyes clear despite the tears that had left tracks down her cheeks. My whole life just got rewritten in the last hour, and none of you seem to care how I feel about it. Sweetheart, I began, reaching for her, but she stepped back. No, I need to say this. She turned to Eleanor first. You're my biological mother. You gave birth to me. But instead of either embracing that truth or fully letting me go, you've spent 16 years punishing me for something that was never my fault. Eleanor flinched but didn't protest. Sophia turned to Derek next. And you're still my father, biologically and in every other way that matters. Nothing changes that. But you never noticed how your family treated me. All those comments, those small cruelties, you brushed them off, made excuses. Derek's face crumpled. Sophia, I never realized. I know, she said softer now. You see the best in people. It's one of the things I love about you. But it meant I had no defender when I needed one most. Finally, she faced me, and my heart constricted painfully in my chest. Mom, she said, and I nearly collapsed with relief that she still used that word. You've always fought for me, always made me feel loved. But even you kept me in the dark about looking for my birth parents, about what you knew or suspected about my origins. We were trying to protect you, I said weakly. I didn't need protection, Sophia replied. I needed honesty. I needed to know why I felt like an outsider in my own family. Her gaze swept the room, landing finally on Margaret, who had remained regally detached throughout the emotional exchange. And you, Sophia said, her voice hardening. You orchestrated all of this, moved people around like chess pieces to preserve your precious family image. Did you ever, even once, consider what was best for me? Not as a Harrington, not as a legacy, but as a human being? Margaret appeared genuinely startled by the direct confrontation. Everything I did was for your benefit. Sophia. To give you advantages, opportunities? No, Sophia cut her off. Everything you did was to control the narrative, to decide who knew what, who belonged where. Even now, you're not sorry for manipulating all of us. You're only sorry you got caught. For the first time in my memory, Margaret Harrington seemed at a loss for words. The matriarch who had ruled the family with quiet authority for decades sat speechless before the teenager whose existence she had arranged like a business transaction. Valerie, who had been a silent witness until now, stepped forward. Sophia's right, she said, surprising all of us. This family has always operated on secrets and appearances. Mother, what you did. It wasn't your decision to make, not alone. I did what was necessary, Margaret insisted, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. You did what was easiest for you, Valerie countered. The path that caused the least disruption to your vision of what this family should be. She turned to Eleanor. And I owe you an apology, cousin. All these years, I thought your attitude toward Sophia was simple jealousy or resentment. I had no idea you were carrying this burden. Eleanor nodded, accepting the olive branch without words. The truth was finally out in the open, messy, painful, but real. No more whispers, no more subtle exclusions. Just a family facing its own broken pieces, wondering if they could ever be put back together. What happens now? Derek asked the question we were all thinking. Sophia looked around at all of us, her father, her adoptive mother, her biological mother, the grandmother who had orchestrated it all. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw something. Like peace in her expression. Now, she said, we start over. With the truth as our foundation, not secrets. And in that moment, despite everything, I felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps she was right. Valerie's suggestion that we all needed a moment to process resulted in our fragmented family dispersing throughout her expansive home. Derek retreated to the back porch, staring unseeing at the abandoned family reunion. Eleanor disappeared upstairs, presumably to collect herself. Margaret remained in the formal living room, her posture unchanged, a queen still on her throne, despite the revolution around her. I found Sophia in Valerie's kitchen, leaning against the marble countertop, her phone clutched in her hand. Cameron's coming to pick me up, she said without looking at me. I can't stay here. I understand, I said, keeping my distance, unsure where the boundaries now stood between us. Do you want me and your father to leave with you? She hesitated. No, I think I need some space, to think. The words stung, but I nodded. Of course, whatever you need. What I need, she said, finally turning to face me, is for something in my life to still make sense. I'm still your mother, I said quietly. That hasn't changed. Not for me. Tears welled in her eyes. But everything else has. Dad is my biological father, but didn't know it. Eleanor is my biological mother, but gave me away. Grandmother Margaret orchestrated this whole situation. The family I thought just didn't accept me because I was adopted actually had this whole secret about who I really am. She pressed her palms against her eyes. It's like I've been living in some twisted soap opera and didn't even know it. I wanted desperately to hold her, to comfort her as I had when she was small. But the wall between us felt too solid to breach. I know it's a lot, I said instead. Too much to process all at once. But we'll figure it out together, as a family. Which family? She asked bitterly. The one that raised me? The one that gave birth to me? The one that lied to me for 16 years? Before I could answer, Valerie entered the kitchen. She'd changed from her garden party dress into more casual clothes and had removed most of her makeup, making her look younger, more vulnerable. The guests have all left, she reported. I told them there was a family emergency. A short laugh escaped her. I suppose that's true enough. Did you know? Sophia asked directly. About me? About Eleanor? Valerie shook her head firmly. No, I would never have participated in that particular deception. She leaned against the counter near Sophia. Your grandmother and I have had our differences over the years, but I never imagined something of this magnitude. Will you tell the others? I asked. The extended family? That's not my decision to make, Valerie said, glancing at Sophia. This is your story. All of yours. I think you should decide together how much the rest of the family needs to know. A chime from Sophia's phone interrupted us. Cameron's outside, she said, straightening. I need to go. When will you be back? I asked, unable to keep the worry from my voice. I don't know, she admitted. I'll stay at Cameron's tonight. His parents said it's okay. I nodded, swallowing the protest that rose instinctively. Cameron's parents were good people, and Sophia needed a neutral space right now. Call us if you need anything. Anything at all. She paused at the doorway. I will. Then, almost as an afterthought, I'm not angry at you, Mom. Not really. Just at the situation. It wasn't everything I wanted to hear, but it was something. A small bridge across the chasm that had opened between us. I watched her walk down. The hallway, back straight, head high, carrying the weight of revelations that would have crushed many adults. She's stronger than any of us realized, Valerie observed. She's a Harrington, I said, with only a touch of irony. In more ways than we knew. After Sophia left, I found Derek in Valerie's study, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. He looked up as I entered, his eyes red-rimmed. She's gone to Cameron's, I reported, sinking into the leather chair opposite him. Says she needs space. He nodded slowly. Can't blame her. I could use some space myself. He took a sip from his glass. From this house. From my mother. From the last 16 years of lies. Not from Sophia, I hope. Never from Sophia, he said fiercely. She's my daughter. Nothing changes that. Not Eleanor's revelations. Not my mother's manipulations. Nothing. She knows that, I assured him. Deep down, she knows. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the day settling around us like a heavy blanket. Keep replaying that night in my head, Derek said finally. Trying to remember something, anything, about what Eleanor claims happened. But there's nothing. Just fragments of the party, then waking up the next morning with the worst hangover of my life. Does it matter? I asked gently. Whether you remember or not, the DNA doesn't lie. Sophia is your biological child. Of course it matters, he said, his voice rising slightly. It matters that I have no memory of conceiving my own child. It matters that for 16 years, my cousin has looked at me across family dinner tables knowing something I didn't even know about myself. I'm not saying it doesn't matter to you, I clarified. I'm asking if it changes how you feel about Sophia. No, he said without hesitation. She's been my daughter from the moment we brought her home from the adoption agency. Finding out she's biologically mine too, it doesn't change that bond. If anything, it explains it. A soft knock at the door interrupted us. Eleanor stood in the doorway, her eyes red and swollen from crying, but her composure somewhat restored. May I come in? She asked hesitantly. Derek's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Eleanor took the seat beside me, perching on its edge as if ready to flee at any moment. I owe you both an explanation, she began. A better one than what came out in that scene earlier. I think we got the gist, Derek said coolly. You were pregnant with my child, gave her up for adoption, then stood by while your aunt manipulated the situation so Olivia and I would adopt her, all without telling any of us the truth. Eleanor flinched. When you put it that way, it sounds calculated, cold. It wasn't like that. She twisted her hands in her lap. When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified. Your mother offered a solution that seemed perfect at the time. I could finish school, go to college, have a future. The adoption was supposed to be closed, permanent. I'd never know where my baby went. I could move on. But Margaret had other plans, I said. Eleanor nodded. I was halfway through my freshman year of college when she called to tell me you two had adopted my baby. She presented it as a fait accompli, the perfect solution. The baby would stay in the family, but no one would ever know the truth. Except you, Derek pointed out, and my mother, and whoever else was in on this scheme. Just us, Eleanor said, and the private adoption attorney who's bound by confidentiality. Your mother made sure of that. She took a deep breath. I won't pretend I handled it well. Seeing Sophia at family gatherings, watching her grow up calling you mom and dad, it was torture. But I couldn't see a way out that wouldn't destroy everyone involved. So instead, you took your pain out on Sophia, I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Made her feel unwelcome, unwanted. I know, Eleanor said, her voice breaking. It was wrong, unforgivable. I was trying to maintain distance, to protect myself. I never realized how much it would hurt her. Derek set his glass down with deliberate care. What do you want now, Eleanor? Why are you here? I don't want to take Sophia from you, she said quickly. That's not why I'm here. You're her parents in every way that matters. I want a chance to know her, as whatever she's comfortable with. Aunt, friend, distant relative, even just Eleanor. I don't expect her to call me mom or to suddenly develop feelings for me. That's not our decision to make, I said. It's Sophia's. She's the one who's had her entire identity thrown into question. I know, Eleanor acknowledged. And I'll respect whatever boundaries she sets. I just wanted you both to know that I'm not looking to disrupt your family further. Derek studied her for a long moment. Did you ever consider telling me the truth? Before all this came out? Eleanor's gaze dropped to her hands. Many times, especially as Sophia got older and started to look more like me. But your mother made it clear what would happen if I did. What exactly did she threaten you with? I asked. Financial ruin, for one, Eleanor said. My parents set up a trust fund for me, but Margaret was the executor until I turned 35. She implied she could find reasons to withhold those funds if I didn't play by her rules. Jesus, Derek muttered. But more than that, Eleanor continued, she threatened to turn the entire family against me, to paint me as an opportunist, a manipulator who took advantage of you when you were intoxicated. Who would believe my version over hers, over yours, if you genuinely didn't remember anything? The room fell silent as we absorbed this. Margaret's web of control extended further than any of us had realized. We need to talk to her, Derek said finally. All of us together, before we decide anything else. Eleanor blanched. I don't think... Not to punish you? I clarified. But to establish the truth, once and for all. No more secrets. No more manipulation. For Sophia's sake. A firm knock at the study door made us all turn. Margaret stood in the doorway, Valerie behind her. I believe I'm the subject of this conversation, Margaret said, her voice as controlled as ever. May I join you? Derek gestured to the remaining armchair without speaking. Margaret entered and sat with practiced grace, while Valerie hovered near the doorway, clearly uncertain whether to stay or go. Valerie, please join us, I said, making the decision for her. This affects the whole family. Once we were all seated, an uncomfortable silence descended. Finally, Derek broke it. Mother, I want to understand why, he said, his voice carefully modulated. Not just the adoption arrangement, but the years of secrecy that followed, the manipulation, the control. Margaret regarded him steadily. I've always done what I believed was best for this family. For all of you. That's not an answer. Derek pressed. That's a justification. What would you have had me do? Margaret asked. Allow Eleanor's reputation to be destroyed? Watch my granddaughter be raised by strangers? Deny you and Olivia the child you so desperately wanted? You could. Have told us the truth, I said. Let us make an informed decision. Would you have adopted Sophia if you'd known she was Derek and Eleanor's child? Margaret challenged. The question caught me off guard. Would we have? The situation would have been so different, so much more complicated. Yes, I said finally, with absolute certainty. I would have, because even then she would have been a child who needed a loving home, and we had love to give. Derek reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. And I would have wanted to raise my child, regardless of the circumstances of her conception. Margaret's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Then, perhaps I was wrong to keep the truth from you, but at the time it seemed the cleanest solution, a fresh start for everyone. At Eleanor's expense, Valerie pointed out, and ultimately at Sophia's. I never intended for Eleanor to be part of Sophia's life, Margaret admitted. The original adoption plan would have separated them completely. It was only when Olivia and Derek began exploring adoption that I saw an opportunity to keep my granddaughter in the family. Without considering what it would do to Eleanor to watch her child grow up calling other people mom and dad, I said, or what it would do to Sophia to be subtly rejected by her own biological mother at every family gathering, Derek added. Margaret's composure finally cracked, just slightly. I made the best decision I could with the information I had at the time. If it was wrong. She paused, something like genuine regret crossing her features. If it was wrong, I will have to live with that. Eleanor leaned forward. The question isn't about the past anymore. It's about what we do now, how we move forward. For Sophia's sake, Valerie added. Derek looked around at each of us, his mother, his sister, his cousin who was also his daughter's biological mother, and me, the woman who had raised that daughter as my own for 16 years. I think, he said slowly, that we need to let Sophia decide what happens next. We've all made enough decisions for her without her input. It's time she had a say in her own life, her own identity. As we sat there in Valerie's study, the remains of the family, reunion abandoned outside, I realized we had reached a turning point. The carefully maintained Harrington facade had cracked, revealing the messy, complicated humans behind it. The question now was whether those humans, all of us, could build something authentic from the wreckage of secrets and lies. I'll call her, I said, reaching for my phone. Ask her to come back. Not to make decisions right now, but to hear that we're all willing to follow her lead on this. That for once, the Harrington family is putting her needs first. As I dialed, I caught Eleanor's eye across the room. For the first time, I saw her not as the cold, distant relative who had made my daughter feel unwelcome, but as another mother, one who had made an impossible choice and lived with the consequences every day since. In that moment of recognition, something shifted between us. Not forgiveness exactly, but the beginning of understanding. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but at least now we could walk it in the light, without the shadows of secrets distorting every step. 6 months have passed since that explosive family reunion. The seasons have changed, summer's heat giving way to autumn's crisp embrace, and then winter's chill. Now, as the first hints of spring emerge in Elmwood Heights, our family continues its own cautious rebirth. Sophia agreed to return to Valerie's house that evening, not for resolution, it was far too soon for that, but to establish boundaries, for moving forward. She arrived with Cameron at her side, his steady presence giving her the strength she needed to face the family that had simultaneously been hers and not hers for 16 years. What followed was not the tearful reconciliation of Hollywood movies, but something more measured, more authentic. Sophia listened as each adult apologized in their own way. Derek for his obliviousness to her pain, Eleanor for her years of emotional distance, Margaret for her manipulative control. I apologized too for not seeing the patterns sooner, for not demanding answers when questions first arose. When everyone had spoken, Sophia laid out her terms. She would need time and space. She would see a therapist to process the revelation. She would maintain relationships with those who respected her boundaries and cut off those who didn't. And most importantly, she would decide for herself what family meant going forward. I'm not throwing away 16 years with the people who raised me, she told us, her voice steady despite the tears shimmering in her eyes. But I'm not ignoring the truth about where I came from either. I get to decide how all of this fits into my life. It was the most adult thing I'd ever heard her say. In the months that followed, we settled into a new normal. Or perhaps normal is the wrong word. There's nothing normal about navigating the aftermath of such profound revelations. But we established a rhythm, a way of relating to each other that acknowledged both the past and the present. Derek and I remained Sophia's parents in every practical sense. She continued living with us, calling us mom and dad, sharing meals and movie nights and the mundane details of daily life. But Eleanor was now part of her life too, carefully finding her place in this reconfigured family landscape. It began with coffee dates. Once a week, Sophia would meet Eleanor at a cafe halfway between our house and Eleanor's apartment. They would talk for an hour, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on Sophia's comfort level. I never asked what they discussed during these meetings, and Sophia rarely volunteered details. This was her relationship to define, not mine. She's not so bad when she's not trying to pretend she doesn't care about me, Sophia told me after the third such meeting. She's actually really funny, sarcastic like me. The genetic connection was undeniable, visible not just in physical traits, but in mannerisms, preferences, expressions. Watching them together at the small family dinner we hosted for Christmas, a dramatically scaled-down affair compared to previous Harrington gatherings. I noticed how they both tilted their heads the same way when listening, how they shared the same crooked smile. Derek noticed too. It's strange, he confided one night after Sophia had gone to bed. Seeing parts of myself and parts of Eleanor in her. Things I always attributed to coincidence or environment, her artistic talent, her way of analyzing problems. They were hardwired all along. Nature and nurture, I said. She's a product of both. His relationship with Eleanor evolved too, moving from the initial shock and sense of betrayal to an awkward truce and eventually to something approaching friendship. They would never be close. Too much history, too much complication stood between them, but they found common ground in their shared love for Sophia. Margaret proved the most resistant to change. The Harrington matriarch had spent decades controlling the family narrative, and surrendering that control didn't come easily. Her first instinct was damage control. She attempted to buy Eleanor's silence with promises of financial security, tried to convince Derek and me that public acknowledgement of the truth would only hurt Sophia further. When these tactics failed, she retreated to her colonial home, nursing wounded pride and diminished influence. For 2 months, she refused to participate in family gatherings, sending formal regrets as if declining a business engagement. It was Sophia who eventually breached the fortress of Margaret's isolation, arriving unannounced one Sunday afternoon, with a photo album under her arm. "I thought you might want to see these," she told her grandmother. "Mom helped me put together pictures from growing up. Dance recitals, science fairs, vacations, things you missed by keeping me at arm's length." Margaret, caught off guard by this direct approach, invited her in. They spent 3 hours together that day, the beginning of a complicated but genuine relationship between a grandmother and the granddaughter she had orchestrated into existence through morally questionable means. She cried when she saw my kindergarten graduation picture, Sophia reported that evening. "I've never seen grandmother cry before. It was weird." "Good weird or bad weird?" I asked. Sophia considered this. Just weird, but maybe necessary weird. As for Valerie, she emerged from the family earthquake as an unexpected ally. Once Margaret's most loyal supporter and enforcer of Harrington traditions, she now positioned herself as a bridge between the fractured family branches. She hosted small gatherings where different combinations of us could interact in a neutral setting. She championed Sophia's right to define her own relationship with each family member. "I spent too many years prioritizing appearances over people," she confided to me during one such gathering. Watching how this has affected Sophia, it's made me rethink everything. Her twins, Madison and Mackenzie, initially struggled with the revelation that their adopted cousin was actually their half-sister and their aunt's biological child. Teenagers themselves, they oscillated between morbid fascination with the family scandal and genuine concern for Sophia. Eventually, guided by their mother's evolving perspective, they settled into a less complicated relationship with their cousin, or half-sister, or whatever label felt right on any given day. The extended Harrington clan received a simplified version of events. Eleanor had given a child up for adoption as a teenager, and through an extraordinary coincidence, that child had been adopted by Derek and me. Most accepted this edited truth without question. A few suspected there was more to the story, but respected our privacy. Family gatherings became smaller, more intentional, less about maintaining appearances, and more about genuine connection. Today marks another milestone in our journey. Sophia turned 17, and for the first time, she's requested that Eleanor join us for her birthday dinner. Not the large Harrington celebration that would have been traditional in years past, but an intimate gathering at our home. Just Derek and me, Eleanor, Cameron, and two of Sophia's closest friends from school. As I prepare Sophia's favorite meal, baked ziti with garlic bread and Caesar salad, I watch through the kitchen window as she sits on the back porch swing with Eleanor. They're looking at something on Sophia's phone, both laughing, their heads bent together in a mirror image of shared genetics. Derek moves around the backyard, setting up the patio heaters against the early March chill, occasionally glancing at the two with an expression that blends wonder and lingering disbelief. The doorbell rings, and I wipe my hands on a dish towel to answer it. Cameron stands on the porch, a carefully wrapped gift in his hands, his expression serious as always. "Mrs. Harrington," he greets me formally, then catches himself. "I mean, Olivia. Sorry, still getting used to that." Sophia had insisted after the revelation that I stop being Mrs. Harrington to her friends and become simply Olivia, part of her reclamation of identity, of determining who was what in her reconfigured life. "Come in, Cameron," I say warmly. "Sophia's out back with Eleanor." He nods, still slightly uncomfortable with the complicated family dynamics, but steadfastly supportive of Sophia through it all. "Is there anything I can help with before the others arrive?" "Actually, would you mind finishing the salad? I need to get the cake from my hiding spot in the garage." As we move around the kitchen together, I'm struck by the easy domesticity of the moment. 6 months ago, I couldn't have imagined this. Eleanor in our backyard, Cameron chopping vegetables in our kitchen, Sophia embracing the complicated truth of her origins instead of being destroyed by it. The cake is Sophia's favorite, chocolate with buttercream frosting, decorated with wildflowers made of fondant. I'd stayed up late finishing it, wanting everything to be perfect for this birthday. That feels so symbolic of our new beginning. Derek comes in from the yard, his cheeks flushed from the cool air. Everything's set up outside. Eleanor's got Sophia laughing about something. Probably my dancing at our wedding. She brought photos. He peers at the cake. "That looks amazing, Liv." "Thanks," I say, feeling unaccountably shy. "Do you think she'll like it?" "She'll love it." He wraps an arm around my shoulders and speaks softly, for my ears only. "You're an incredible mother, you know that? The way you've handled all of this. Put Sophia first every step of the way." Tears spring to my eyes unexpectedly. "I just want her to be happy, to feel whole." "She does," he assures me. "In a different way than before, maybe. More complicated, less fairy tale. But real. Real. Yes, that's the word for what our family has become. The pristine Harrington facade has cracked, revealing the messy humanity beneath. But perhaps that was always the more valuable thing." The doorbell rings again, Sophia's friends arriving together. I wipe away my tears and go to welcome them, the cake safely in Derek's hands. Later, as we gather around the patio table, candles glowing in the twilight, I watch Sophia at the center of our reconfigured constellation. She's smiling, genuinely happy despite, or perhaps because of, the truth that has transformed her world. Eleanor sits beside her, still finding her place but no longer pretending to be a distant relative with no special connection. Derek presides, at the head of the table, still her father in every way that matters. I sit opposite Eleanor, still her mother, the person who has raised and loved her for 17 years. As Sophia blows out her candles, making a wish none of us are privy to, I realize that family is not the neat, orderly structure depicted on Valerie's abandoned family tree. It's not defined by straight lines connecting perfectly aligned generations. It's messy and complicated, shaped by choices both good and bad, by secrets revealed and truths acknowledged, by forgiveness offered and received. "Speech!" Cameron calls, and Sophia blushes but stands, raising her glass of sparkling cider. "I just want to say thank you all for being here," she begins, her voice steady and clear in the evening air. A year ago, I never could have imagined us all sitting around the same table. I thought I had to choose between being adopted and belonging, between truth and family. What I've learned is that I don't have to choose. I can be all of who I am. She looks around at each of us. Her father who didn't know he was her father, her birth mother who gave her up, her adoptive mother who raised her, her boyfriend who stood by her through the earthquake of revelation, her friends who accepted the complicated truth without judgment. Someone once told me that family is more than DNA, she continues, her eyes meeting mine. I think that's true, but DNA is part of the story too, my story, and I'm glad I finally know all of it, even the hard parts. She raises her glass higher. So here's to complicated families and difficult truths, to second chances and new beginnings, to being exactly who we are, messy parts and all. To family, Derek echoes, raising his own glass, in all its forms. As we toast under the emerging stars, I think about the DNA test that upended our lives 6 months ago. It revealed genetic connections that had been hidden, yes. But more importantly, it revealed the strength of bonds that transcend biology. Bonds forged through years of bedtime stories and Band-Aids on skinned knees, through homework help and heart-to-heart talks, through unwavering love in the face of difficult truths. In the end, they called my daughter adopted at the family reunion. Then she pulled out the DNA test, and we discovered that family is both more complicated and more resilient than any of us had ever imagined. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.